Eric's bed behind me. He's waving.
He has some sleeping issues when we record, so we're trying to find ways around it.
He's supposed to go to sleep, so we'll see how that goes.
Here's Andy.
I love you, Henry.
Dad says he loves you, Henry.
I'm getting these other messages about select a certificate to authenticate yourself.
No.
What?
Hey, Andy.
IH3 Google user content.
Andy.
Hey, congratulations to Vivi.
I don't think she can hear yet.
Oh.
Hey, congratulations.
Congratulations to Vivi.
Congratulations.
Hey, congrats.
She made it.
You don't have to do this if you guys are celebrating the stuff tonight,
No, she's at project graduation, so she's gone.
All right.
Yeah. So we did it during the day.
You did. Okay, good. We were like, Andy does not need to come to this. Her daughter just graduated high school. It's a big deal.
There are important things.
All right, so we're good.
I was just going to open Podbean or Apple Podcasts to see if there's any new reviews. 1 second.
New reviews.
We're on right now on YouTube?
Mm-hmm. No, we are live, yes, but there's nobody in the chat if we want to wait a minute or two.
Yeah, and I'm pulling up our Patreon and everything too.
Podcasts. There it is.
Oh yeah, we got people in the chat.
Do we? I don't see anybody.
I don't see anything yet either.
I don't see anything.
Nobody's typed yet, but there's 4 people in the
stream.
Oh, they might be watching.
7. Hello. Oh man, they're coming in now. Okay.
Coming in hot.
Poop Bane.
There he is.
There he is. Poop. We can't do this without that first.
Everybody on a count of 3 has to tell Eric to buy the Dean. Just say that on 3. 1, 2, 3. Buy the Dean.
Buy the Dean.
And by the way, Mario, if you want to turn your gain down a bit, your vocals are a little bit hot.
Too hot.
Oh, sorry.
It's too hot in here.
All right, I'm good. Jamie, did you get a
way to the left?
Hang on 1 second. I'm going. Film interviews. I always have a hard time going to the reviews. Oh, wait. Okay.
Okay.
9 months ago. Oh, 2 weeks. Okay.
Do that one. Ready?
It's by Stretch McGuffin. Yeah.
Hey, it's our buddy.
Yeah.
All right.
You ready?
Yeah.
Are you going to record, Patrick?
Yeah, I am. Thank you.
Are you going to record or?
I know. Passive aggressive. Okay.
Welcome to Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast.
Yeah, I was talking when you started, so I just did it again.
Welcome to Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Prater, and I'm joined by my co-hosts,
Patrick Green,
Andy Geek Girl,
Micah Green,
Mary Benvenuto,
Kyle June.
Welcome, everybody.
Hey. Hi. We got a round table tonight. We may have some people popping in and out. The chat is going nuts. We're going to definitely get some of your thoughts in this episode because tonight's topic is one that I'm very passionate about. I know a lot of us are, and it's always a fun one to get people in the communities kind of read on this issue. So we can't wait for that. But before we do, I'm going to do some patron shout outs, and then let's hand it over to Jamie maybe to read a review. So for Patreon, we have Matt Thomas, Shora Multivac, Andrew Tracy, Guy Sproul, and Zachary Eastrom from the last couple months. If you'd like to join them, please go to perfectorganism.com/support. We just had an awesome backrooms frame rate last night.
Oh, yeah.
If anybody would like to take a class taught by Kyle June on liminality and cinema, a great 101 entry-level class is last night's backrooms frame rate because that was super fun.
Yeah.
We're going to do Obsession soon. We did a game episode that featured a bunch of producers on it, which was awesome. So if you want all that stuff, please, join. And if you join at the $12 level and up, you get producer tier access, and then you get a whole panoply of other things. We'll give the producers a separate shout out as we always do at the end of the show. And Jamie M. Prater, got a review?
I do. So we have a review from a friend and a producer named Stretch McGuffin. His review starts with "Not Your Average Fan Pod. Perfect Organism is the only podcast for the alien universe a fan could need. In addition to having an encyclopedic knowledge of the extended lore, the hosts bring the type of thoughtful insights and critiques that only people truly fluent in the art of storytelling can. Jamie and Patrick are fantastic, but so are the guests and the staple of co-hosts that cycle through on different episodes. I often disagree with opinions expressed on the show, but the episodes are always thought-provoking. And where And where's the joy of geeky obsession if not having heated disagreements with other people just as passionate as you? Every time I check out another Alien podcast, it always reminds me of just how good PO and the people who produce it are. I always come back. I can't recommend it enough.
Oh
Thank
my
you, Stretch.
Thank you.
That is
Thank
so
you,
sweet.
Stretchy
Thank
Stretch.
you.
That was a
I
good one.
love that because it's also like
Yeah.
it's like real, you know? Like he doesn't
Yes.
always agree with us. I love that.
And if you want your review read on the air, live, whatever, please write us a review at Apple Podcasts. The more reviews we get, the better it looks for us, the better our show does. So,
Absolutely. So tonight we're here to talk about something that's known by many names. Many people call it it's I think canonically the black liquid. It's often called the pathogen. Most of us call it the black goo just because it sounds disgusting. It's also called chemical A-0.39 something with 1,000 letters after it that's in the RPG that I can't remember. But the idea is that it is this mysterious substance that first appears in Prometheus. And since that fateful day in 2012, it has been argued about extensively. It has been both beloved and bemoaned. And it has, to me at least, really found its voice in the expanded universe because this pathogen has now become like a central thing in things like the RPG and in books like the novels of Alex White, for example. But also in the comic book lore, it is really it's infected, if you will, even accelerated, all these other forms of entertainment that we love. And in Romulus, of course, it got a very central starring role once again, which I think further kind of cemented its place in terms of lore. But yeah, tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the goo itself, I think. We're going to also talk about if it kind of helps or hurts the series.
Yeah, and first question for everyone, but probably specifically for you, Patrick, because the prepotens, is that what the pathogen is called as well? Something prepotens? Oh,
no.
Okay. I always thought that for some reason.
That's an astute point. No, it's Plagiaris prepotens is the name. It's related to it. It's the thing that in Alex's novels and now in Romulus is deposited within the host. So like the facehugger, instead of like laying a little embryonic egg, is almost I kind of look at it almost as like a bunch of like pluripotent stem cells that are put in with like some kind of encoding information, and then they can kind of create the alien, within the host. But I don't know, Alex, if I'm wrong, please correct me on that.
I'm curious everyone's first like opinion out of the gate. Like, does this work for people? Does it not work?
I would say it works for me in a weird sense of, because I think there's so much freedom that you can have with it, because it doesn't have to be in you don't need the goo to have a successful alien video game, movie, or book. Even like you can totally not even include that at all, and the book still totally works, and you can kind of lean into it and it could totally work too. Even a lot of things with like the border bombings and stuff in the EU can get like super crazy, and like reading or listening to that breakdown of like people just like running from like the scene almost in Covenant, to where like David just unleashes everything and the goo just goes everywhere. I think that part for me is a little kind of weird, just how the liquid kind of goes like super airborne and goes down. But I mean, it's still kind of neat in itself. But I just as like a summary of how I feel about the goo, I like it, but at the same time, I would never want that to be like the origin story of the Xeno, like it came from the liquid. As long as they don't try to super explain the liquid, I think it kind of works it can kind of be whatever you want it to be and stuff like that. But I would say it's a positive, especially in the EU, like you were saying, Patrick.
I have to say
I'm texting Alex literally as we're talking to make sure that I'm representing this correctly. Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I have to say, the opening scene in Prometheus, I actually found was captivating, is probably my favorite scene in the film. I was hooked. But then as the film progressed and then just the continued use of it, I almost equate the black goo in my mind to like midichlorians in the prequels of Star Wars, where it
Oh my God.
introduced
Exactly. Literally a
Yeah, in my mind, I was like, oh, it's midichlorians, except in the alien universe. Like, like a further explanation of this mystery that I don't know if I wanted to know the answer to, right? I loved the mystery of it. Having said that, there are times when I think it's effective. There are times when I think it's like sort of ham-fisted in or they needed something. Um, we can talk about those, but overall, I don't think, as Mary was saying, as long as they don't like rely on it for everything, I don't dislike it, but sometimes I think it's a little heavy-handed, and a little confusing. Like the fact that we didn't quite know, exactly what it was, or if it was the same thing that gets implanted. I think it's not quite clear and it's a little inconsistent at times, which I think is the biggest factor for me and not 100% accepting it.
I honestly like, this is going to sound kind of mean, but I don't really think about it that much. And I think it's because it doesn't really like fully grab my attention. I agree, Andy, it's like the midichlorians, but it doesn't make me angry like the midichlorians make me angry. All right, Star Wars talk later. But like the goo itself, I think it's a cool device in Prometheus, especially the opening scene. I do agree, it's gorgeous, it's mysterious, it's very elusive, and I want to know more. But other than that, I don't really think about it ever. Like sometimes when I think about David, I remember it, but for the most part, it doesn't really stay in my mind at the forefront. And I don't know if that's them playing a long game or if it's just that they don't really know what it is yet. So I just don't really think about it that much.
So it's funny. I was listening today just because I wanted to see the discourse again on this from a while ago. I listened to the podcast at the gym, the episode 225. They only had a roundtable on this on Prometheus, which wasn't directly about the black goo, but it came up. And I kind of didn't change my argument at all, like, just kind of like refreshing because I didn't want to like repeat points or whatever. I'm kind of fine with it. Like my answer, I remember Patrick, like when we first met, like, and everyone, he asked me about the prequels, and I said they're fine. Like that was my answer. I was like, it's like, which means like they're mid to me, but like I don't hate them, I don't love them. I think they have significance at moments, but um, the Black Goose like fine to me. I think they are. I'm erring on the side that I'm kind of like whatever. I'm like maybe negative about it, but just because I feel like it demystifies more of the lore. Like I feel like we're getting an encyclopedia of everything regarding the xenomorph because of Prometheus. And I guess that's why I was rewatching it to see that. But like I get that it would have something, like there is some kind of substance that would make sense for it. So like I think as long as it's not like overdone where like every single alien film now is going to be talking about the pathogen, if you will, it's fine. I don't like, and that's why I keep going back to like I'm kind of don't care enough about it, which is kind of bleak, but like I'm being honest, like I think it's useful when it's useful. And when it's not, I don't think it needs to be the primary focus. Like it does create interesting new mutations, as we've seen in Prometheus and in Covenant. So at this point, we don't need a million different like monsters, but at times it could be interesting because just to give variety. So because of that, I don't think there's any issue with it, but I just hope that it's not overdone is my biggest issue and concern.
Yeah, I would agree. It's interesting for those of us who are X-Files fans. I don't know. I don't even know if you watched.
Jamie. You brought that up.
Well, in the first X-Files film, they have this stuff. I mean, all throughout the show too, which is, of course, was owned by Fox at the time, and is now owned by Disney. They had a whole like black goo thing going until finally the movie, which came out in '98. You see these people infected, and there's this little thing growing inside people, and it bursts out just like the alien. And then, oddly enough, it's like it took it from Alien, then Alien took the black goo, or Ridley Scott took the black goo, the pathogen, from the X-Files. And I understand what people say that it's that it's divisive and that it's easy. It can be too easy. You just throw black goo and someone becomes an alien. At the same time, I think that there's possibility with it, and I do think we are kind of past eggs and face huggers. Not that I don't want to not see those anymore. For sure, I'd love to see them. But I
did
would
you just say the beast is cooked?
no.
I think
I
you
did
just
not.
said I think that's
Jamie
what I heard.
hates
I think
face
that
huggers.
Jamie said
Oh,
the
I
beast.
fucking hate them.
Fucking hates face huggers.
But no, like I think that there's so much that can be done. In fact, obviously, we just released an audio drama in April, which used the pathogen as a vehicle to start this character changing into what would become a version of the xenomorph. I want to see more of that, and I want to see the pathogen work the way I want to see what Ridley Scott did with the first Alien. It was a cut scene of the egg morphing, essentially. I want to see something new, and we're seeing it a little bit. Like we've seen the introduction of the pathogen, but they're not really doing much with it. And I feel like there's so much potential there.
I think so. I would put myself in the camp of somebody who actually is grateful for it, because a lot of my favorite things subsequent to like its introduction to come out have featured it in different ways. And like Alex's novels being like a perfect example of it, because the way that Alex uses, the Plagiaris praepotens idea and this mutagenic idea is like so unsettling and so interesting and so, literally mercurial. It's really, really cool. But I think going back to like its origins for a second, I think part of the issue with this concept is that it's been handled incredibly sloppily. To be fair, like much of this universe that we love so much has been handled very sloppily over time, where it's like somebody has an idea and they're like, okay, now like let's throw this in the mix, and then a filmmaker down the road picks it up again and it doesn't really quite work, but they're like, okay, we'll kind of keep it. In this case, the black goo famously originated as bugs. In the Spates original script, the black goo is like a swarm of like beetles or something. And the beetles like eat the engineer and then like hold on to his DNA somehow and like put that all over the earth or whatever planet it is. Um, but when Lindelof came on is I think when they changed in the Lindelof rewrite, when it changed into this like gooey substance, and they kept it. But I feel like in something was kind of lost in that the it didn't like function. It's sort of supposed to function like a swarm of bugs, like in the beginning it feels like it, right? Because it's like dissolving the engineer, but then it doesn't do that ever again, other than like that one shot in Covenant where it's used as a bioweapon and it's kind of dissolving, that race of engineer like species. But most of the time it's mutagenic, right? Like most of the time when we see it, it's altering something. It's creating the anathema. It's creating the Byfield, or the hammerpedes, right, in Prometheus. Which I mean, those are two great examples of like what the fuck do they have in common? Like there's nothing in common. It just made like just scary monster forms of something. You know what I mean? Because like the hammerpede doesn't look any more xenomorphic than the worms did, right? So like, why is it that like Fifield looks like he's transforming into like an XX121? Neither here nor there. But then when it comes up again subsequently, it's treated differently. Like in Romulus, it is like derived. It's derived from alien DNA. They show right in Romulus, which then means that the alien itself is the accelerant. Right? Wouldn't that stand to reason that that's the point? But if that's what's happening, then why is it also what dissolves the engineer in the beginning of Prometheus? Like I feel like they literally didn't like think about that, or maybe nobody sat down and was like, okay, like let's talk about how this thing, what this actually does. So I think when it's at its worst, it becomes midichlorians, or it becomes like a MacGuffin. It becomes something where it's like it's unobtainium, it's like this sort of like perfect thing that just exists in this film land. And it just, if there's like something doesn't make sense anywhere, it's like, oh, it's the black goo. Like the black goo can do this, it can do that, it can do this. Well, maybe this didn't make sense because of the black goo, That's when it's at its worst. When it's at its best, I think it's really, really scary shit. Like I really think Cold Forge introducing Plagiaris praepotens is wonderfully scary. And I think a lot of the best things in Covenant come from it. I think that there's a lot of very scary ideas in Covenant that you can trace back to the goo being in Prometheus and what it does to people. This idea of like accelerated evolution. And for what it's worth, I always go to bat for the first 10 minutes of Prometheus, which are some of my favorite minutes in all of Alien. Like the beginning of Prometheus, I think is like maybe the best beginning of an Alien film. Like it's up there for me. I think it's incredible. And a lot of that is because of this, the transmutation of this goo, and this feeling of really something really that stirs unease, but is also really beautiful, because it's shot in this, it's such a beautiful setting and it feels like a sacred ritual, and yet it's so disturbing. And you see them like unwinding the helices of the DNA and stuff, and it's just, I don't know. I think when it's done well, it's done really well, and when it's done poorly, it's done lazily.
How do we feel about its use in Romulus? What example would you put it there? Because I think it was interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it in Romulus, but then I thought it was like very quick. Like it wasn't,
Like an afterthought, right?
yeah.
Almost.
And
That's what
again,
it
like
feels like to me.
so like what is it really doing in Romulus, I think is another way to kind of unpack that, right?
I think
It's
it's a
being
means to an
researched by the
end.
company. Yeah. The company's like researching it, right? In the lab. And then it's derived from alien DNA again. And it is I have a sneeze. Hang on. Oh man.
That's
Oh,
you.
at least it wasn't
Sorry,
a
we're
scream sneeze. Thank
playing
God.
outside with the kids. I know I held it in. And then it's used to like transform. So then K becomes like a vector for it, I guess, if we're looking at it like from a virological standpoint. Like she herself doesn't mutate all the way, but she becomes like a
Yeah.
vector of transmission. Oh, Alex is responding to me. I'm going to let you know what they say.
Sweet.
Of this thing into the new host, which is like this offspring. So like it crosses the placental barrier, right? Like any good antibody, was it G antibody? Um, G. No, it's G. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm getting off track. But yeah, so and then it creates this offspring, which again is something that we haven't seen before. Looks kind of like the anathema, like a little bit like Fifield, right? Or maybe where Fifield was heading in Prometheus. But again, it's very inconsistent, don't you think?
Yeah. I think,
Although, oh,
go ahead,
go ahead.
Jimmy.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just commenting. I feel like I feel like it gets us to the offspring, which is incredibly effective. Like that creature was completely bone chilling. And I will always remember that moment when I first saw it in the theaters and everyone just audibly gasped about it. So it gets us there, but I'm not thinking about it at all. Like as something that I'm like, oh, I want to know more about that, or like how did that change? And then so now I'm confused. Is the black goo also the Prepotens or not? It's not, you said, Patrick?
So it depends on where you're looking, because Alex. Oh, I'm going to read you what Alex just said.
Yeah.
So they say it's pretty similar to stem cells in that it can become a variety of shapes. It's sort of the ultimate blank slate as long as the end product is evil incarnate.
Thank you, Alex.
That's pretty good. So yeah, I mean, so Plagiaris praepotens is specifically the name for the form, this like pluripotent thing that's inserted by the ovipositor of the facehugger into a host. So it is genetically speaking Plagiaris praepotens, but they're because they're in different forms, they're not like the same exact organism.
I'm still
Right?
That makes
confused.
sense. I mean, that makes some sense.
But
Amoeba Jelly
the
said
problem
something
though
really
is that
good.
okay, well, just super quick. The problem is that in Romulus we learned that it's derived from alien DNA, so that means that all of these things are just the alien, but in a different form, and that's where it gets sloppy. But what were you saying though about amoeba jelly?
Amoeba Jelly just said it's consistent in each respective movie. Romulus goo is different from Prometheus goo, which is
So,
clarifying a little bit.
although there's some similarities because if you look in Romulus, or let's just start with Prometheus, fight I can't remember these fucking characters' names. Surprise, surprise. Hollow character.
Holloway.
Holloway?
Holloway,
Yeah.
Hollowfield.
Hollowfield Way.
Um,
Hollowfield. Right, who's also mutating, right? Or
he's
starting to.
mutating,
Right.
has sex with Shaw, impregnates her. It
Impregnates her.
bypasses her, and she has this weird baby. And in Romulus, the same thing happened with what's her name, where she's
Okay.
also
Okay.
Kay, where she's impregnated and something happens to the baby. So they are similar, but they're also, again, I think part of some of the issue with this is because it can be so easy, you need a lot of thought to go into how it's working, how it's moving, what does this thing do? And I think the more they can stick with realism, the scarier it's going to be. And they're not really doing that. They are, but they're not.
In my head, there were always two like separate things. Like I always looked at the Black Goo and Prometheus and Covenant to be the same, and then once we get over to Romulus and Cold Forge, I think it's kind of like you guys were saying, it came right from the face hugger. Like that's whatever that is. I don't like in my head, canon at least, you wouldn't be able to get that black goo if you just had a xenomorph or a chest burster. Like your chance to get the plagiaris prepotense is gone because that's only in the face hugger portion. And in Romulus, I think it would be past it coming out of the face hugger would also be altered with from Wayland Yutani and whatever Rook and them were doing in the science lab, trying to create that form of medicine that they were testing on the rat and stuff like that. So I could definitely see where it would take different things from Prometheus to where Holloway then give to Shaw to get the trilobite to then the offspring with K. So like those inconsistencies in my head kind of make sense because it's almost like two different strains at the same time. But at least that's how it's worked in my head so far.
So the big issue that I'm seeing is that there is an inconsistency among these three films. And I think there are two things that come to my head that I wish could happen. And one of them is happening right now, I guess. The first would be that Dan O'Bannon, we need a Dan O'Bannon to kind of establish lore, and Walter Hill and David Giler. I think I got all of them right. Yeah. All right. So we need that. We need that establishment of what this thing is. Now, you don't have to like spell out and give me the whole exposition in a Wikipedia summary, but what I do need is like, I think just show, don't tell. What is this thing doing? And then, okay, this is what this is. Then we create our own assumptions. Now, ironically, maybe, is that the second thing is that we're getting that. Because nobody knows what the hell is actually going on with this pathogen or goo, whatever. Because of that, we are all making our own postulations regarding it. So we're kind of getting the mystery because of haphazard handling of it. So, and then, you have, I think the most authoritative take on it would be Alex White's work that I've learned from it. I'm going to sit down and read both those novels this summer. I'm so sorry, Alex White and all fans. I'm an English teacher. I have no time to do anything. But regardless of that, everything I've learned, I'm like, I think that might be the most established that we could get an understanding this in a better sense, and I'm sure there are some producers right now that very much know this, well, but that's my thing is like, I don't, it's either we keep it a mystery or we have some kind of established lore that's just shown to us rather than, giving us, this whole exposition dumping that we get in the middle of Romulus. So that's where I'm at in regards to this.
I have a question. The stuff in Covenant, the stuff that it's like airborne, is that also black goo? Because that seems native to that planet.
Like the spores almost.
Yeah, the ones that go in the ear.
Yes.
Like he takes that step or he gets a little too close to the plant and it's like from this plant. So is that like
that? I don't know if that is. I thought
What
you were
is
talking
that?
about the bioweapon, what that David unleashed. The
No,
airborne
not
thing.
that
You're talking about the
one.
spores that
The
lead to
actual
to the
spores.
neomorph. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
what David Unleashed then became a part of, because remember when Daniels is like, listen to that, you don't hear anything, no bird, like that.
Yeah.
Whatever David Unleashed altered the course of that planet, so
Yeah.
it's all in the full flora and fauna.
So maybe
Yeah.
that is whatever the black goo has
Ecosystem.
mutated the
Yeah.
ecosystem to reflect, and then now it's giving us the neomorph. So
But
it's
again,
like
it's like,
each
but if a lot of that black goo was used to annihilate, this race, then like why did some of it work mutagenically also? You know what I mean? Like why did it, I mean to cut you off, sorry about that, Micah, but you know what I
That's
mean?
okay.
Like it's just, again, it's very inconsistent.
It
Yeah.
served the script.
Yeah, they became
Yeah,
the
like-
MacGuffin.
Like
the
that's what it
thing.
did. Like it's
Yeah.
like
Melt
like
some
you
people
needed
if
the
you're
neomorph.
lucky. Or...
Well, it
Yeah.
mutated, I guess
You
some
need the offspring.
organisms
Yeah.
mutated in a way where it thrived,
Life
right?
finds a way.
Right.
But and to be fair, the only other, so there's only two times I can think of in alien lore where an organism is dissolved by it, and they're both engineer or engineer adjacent beings, right?
Maybe the
So that
goo
might be
reacts to their
consistency.
DNA
Maybe
in that way.
because they harvested it or they genetically engineered it to be like catabolic for engineers and anabolic for everything else. I'm whipping out my science words
Something
now.
like that. Yeah. I mean that is an answer. That makes sense. Because why wouldn't it dissolve, even if it's not just dissolving the engineers, why wouldn't it dissolve other random things? Or maybe we don't know that and we just weren't shown that. And maybe they
Right.
didn't even think about that. Like maybe
Maybe
they
not.
are just like they are gonna get dissolved. Oh, and then this is gonna become a spore and be a neomorph. Or I don't know. I think our biggest thing that we keep circling back to is the inconsistency.
Yeah.
And for me, it doesn't like glare out and bother me, but it makes it so I just almost disregard it, which is not great.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I'm not like festering about it, but I just don't need it or really want to think about it too much. But I really love this conversation because I feel like I'm learning.
Alex has given me more great, insights into this, which is worth it because Alex is, of course, like part of why this thing is perceived the way it's perceived. And one thing that they point out that is a really good point that comes up in the novels as well is like the alien, like the xenomorph XX121, is a terrible idea from a product standpoint for the company, right? Like it is really hard to control. It's really resource intensive. It's like they keep talking about making it this bioweapon, but it like never works because like why would it that when you think about it, like it doesn't make any sense. Like how are you going to tell it what to attack and what not to? Like, what I mean? It doesn't make sense. But the goo is the ultimate product. Like the goo is the secret to immortality. The goo is like the secret to life, that can't die because it can't get sick. And it's this idea where like, which to me, from like, if we're talking about the whole series being this metaphor for capitalism, among other metaphors, that works really well because like, if the company really cares about like, what's stronger than war is life. It's like eternity, you know what I mean? And that's something you can make money on because rich people are going to want some of that.
I think it would be interesting if in another iteration, in another film or whatever they do, whatever they decide, that they used the pathogen or the black goo or whatever to alter the course of the life cycle so that going forward there's a difference now. The alien is, maybe it's an ovomorph, but maybe it's different. Maybe it's a face hugger, but the face hugger looks different. That it has been permanently, that would just depend on where they are. So they fall on a planet, and this planet has already been infected by the pathogen, and the alien is also affected by it too. Or at least its life cycle is. I think if they do something with it, it would be amazing. But I think they're just not doing anything with it. They're doing variations on what we've seen. But I also feel like part of this is like realism. If Alien can pick up its realism again, and so it's something where we're not like, oh, that's ridiculous. That's because we've had this discussion before. We don't really do that in the original trilogy, even with issues with story. Everything is fairly airtight. And I think because the pathogen is so specific, there's so much science behind it, how they work, what do they do, what do they want, where do they go, all of those things. So you need someone to write it so it's believable. And when it's not believable, it's like, this is stupid. But when it's believable, it's scary.
Yeah, I agree. If it's too flexible, which in this case when it's used narratively in a film, I think the inconsistency or the flexibility makes it less scary. Because even though we always say the unknown is scary, when it's so muddled in questions, and it's not clear, then it just becomes confusing and you're less scared and you're just like, what is this? Again, like the midichlorian example, which is not scary, but it just it made it less enigmatic and it made it less intriguing, I think. I think it has to have some sort of stability in terms of the rules so that we have a guideline to follow and we can place ourselves in that realism. If it's not real, like you said, if it's just made up, it's like playing a game where like kids just make up rules as they go because they don't like the way it's going. You need some consistency. And I love that it expanded the universe, but at the same time, it almost like reduced the xenomorph's power in a way. we talked about like in Aliens where we kind of made it bugs and we sort of took that away. I think this kind of does the same thing in a way where it takes away the sort of power, the aura of the alien. I don't hate it. I just wish it were a little bit more focused. I think every time it's mentioned, there's a new playbook, a new writer, a new set of rules, and I think that's somebody needs to like rein it in, I think.
Amoeba Jelly has a good point about that in the chat, which, by the way, Jamie, Amoeba Jelly's nickname is from Amoeba Records. What? Love that
I was
song.
reading that. Yeah. Awesome.
So Amoeba says Prometheus's goo is untested and pure, Covenant's is more refined, and then Romulus is almost fully refined, and so the results are less chaotic as the franchise goes on. That's interesting, right? Because it is being, when we first see it, it's like this primordial engineer version. And then in Covenant, David has been working with it, right? So he's been like, and he's had all this time to sort of fixate on it. And then by the time we get to Romulus, it's in company possession for real, and the company is actively experimenting on it. So that could be part of why it's changing. And I guess I'm also thinking, to Andy's point, like, which is a point we're all making, this idea of consistency, like part of me almost feels like it's tough because like I don't want it to have like boundaries around it that are too clear either, because then it becomes just like, I don't know, like something knowable. It's almost like I want its unknowability to be more consistent. Like I don't want to know too much about what it does or doesn't do, just to see like shades of it. I think what the problem is right now when it's used very literally and very inconsistently. So it's like it is this thing that does this, and here's what happens with this organism,
And I think what was so amazing about the original Alien is, you would see images of Ash in his, science room looking at stuff. We didn't know what he was looking at. I'm not even sure he knew fully what he was looking at, and that made it more intriguing and interesting. But if you fast forward to Prometheus, there's some things happening, which I think we all probably agree with, where there's this demystification happening in Prometheus to some degree. It wasn't a creature that was the space jockey. It's this guy. All of these explanations are being given. And the pathogen is kind of another explanation. This thing is from this thing here. And if you're not careful, this thing we see the mural and the queen or whatever it is, the xenomorph behind it up there. We're not sure what we're looking at, which I think is effective and really creepy. But then again, it just goes on to this explanation. And then later on in the film, you have Idris Elba's character. What's his name? Yannick.
Yeah, isn't it Yannick?
I think it's Yannick.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, it's a military operation. And all of a sudden he has all this knowledge about what this place is magically.
In an American accent too. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's a military operation. It's this, it's that. And I think when Alien becomes the most danger to itself, it is when it starts explaining everything. And it stepped into that in Prometheus. It stepped into that a little bit more into Covenant. And those two films put it in a place that it's been hard to retrieve from. So I just think that they need more attention to detail. They need to play this if they're going to use it, which I would imagine they will. I guess we'll see. I mean, they're shooting Alien Earth season 2 right now. We'll see what they do next year. But if they're going to play with this stuff again, do so in a way that's really gripping and interesting, but also give it some rules, like you were saying, Patrick. What are the rules? What is this stuff? How does this work? And we're not going to ask those questions.
The rules, to your point.
Yes,
like
agreed.
Know the rules you're on your own, but like have that behind the scenes, but don't show us what they are, right?
We don't need a scene where, this stuff works this way and then it works this way, and if you put it here, like we don't. But because it's been dumbed down, even in its use, like so they extracted the shit from Big Chap on the Renaissance station, and then they made all of these face huggers and put them in Ziploc bag or airtight bags. Like, so they extracted the stuff, and all of what was in there had the pathway to create face huggers. It just doesn't make sense.
And that's what I was saying earlier about how like Romulus shows us that genetically it just is the alien, which I think almost breaks the whole idea because is it like a self-similar recursive organism? Like, is it just goo? Is the goo part of the life cycle? Is that what they're saying? Is they're saying that it goes pathogen, plagiaris praepotens, face hugger, or no? Well,
Ova
I don't know.
or
So
something.
maybe plagiaris praepotens to ovomorph to face hugger. I don't
I
I
don't
don't know. I don't know how that works.
I like that they're in Ziploc bags though. I
Yeah,
mean, that's a good
Tupperware.
range. Yeah. It's so cute to think about them just like in these little bags.
I did love that prop. That was a good one. Also, I do love the prop in Prometheus, like the actual vase itself. I did find that, like, especially because when they first find it, I think the liquid's dripping the opposite direction. Am I making that up? But is that how I remember it?
Oh, in the original Alien, yes, it's dripping
No,
up, right?
that was on the eggs. It wasn't doing
You're
it in
talking about
Prometheus.
Romulus or or
No,
Prometheus?
in
Oh, sorry.
Prometheus, when David found the vases, was the liquid dripping the opposite direction again? Or am I
On the
totally?
ampules, I feel like
Yeah.
they were
I don't know if it
Okay.
was dripping, but I know it was doing that little like animated whatever
little tap
Yeah.
dance.
dance, the 80s dance.
Yeah. But then also like the twist out and like the pull up like the green vial, like that's been on my that one's in my notebook of projects to make. I think that one's a fun one. Also, Jamie, to your point about like the mystery of it, and I think part of the mystery of like the black glue is almost just that there is kind of the inconsistency. So like it's kind of mysterious in that way. But when you were going to Alien and you were saying the mystery of that film, like I can't imagine the only film, like imagine you see it in 79 for the first time. Like I can't imagine having a conversation talking about that movie and then they're like, what about with the space jockey? And then the guy's like, I have no idea what that was. Like there's that point of time where there's just like they showed that in the movie and that would just go on and you get to like talk to them, like talk about the movie afterwards, and there's that scene that just like never gets explained and it's like so cool. And it would be cool if they did kind of lean that way with the goo or something else for that matter.
Does it ever actually, do any of them ever actually address the origin of the black goo? Like, did the engineers extract it
I don't think
from?
we get
Thank
that.
God that's never talked about, at
Oh,
least
Yeah.
and
explicitly.
oh, I see how they put it in the ampules. That's the question.
Yeah.
Well, she means like where it
where
came from, right?
Like, yeah,
Yeah, where they got it to put in the ampules.
exactly. I don't think they give us that, which I'm okay with
Yeah, me
when we
too.
talk about it right
Right.
now. But at the
That
same time, I'm
that would
like
be bad, I
too
think.
much. But then maybe like I don't know what I want from this goo. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what I want.
exactly.
I want it to be more clear and consistent, but I also don't need it. Like I don't want to explain the life cycle of the Xeno because then we know it and then we can try to control it as humans. At least that's how the fear process is going on in our brains. But like, I don't know. I think they need to find a through line at least with it, where we can kind of get what it is and how it reacts in the world in a general way.
The frustration I'm having with a lot of this is, hearing all of this is we just need a better script writer, dude. Like, like I'm just gonna be like very real. Like, I think that's it, and I think like Alex White, please write the next movie. Like for the love of God, like if anyone has it, like they have it, and
Yeah, please hire them.
yeah, but like I think when we think of the original trilogy, but especially the first one, is that there's this Lovecraftian horror. Like the whole essence of mystery. And I understand that the lore needs to be expanded or then we're just replaying the same haunted house story a million times, even though you can work within that well. I get that. But like, if you want to expand the lore, you need to also expand the mystery, and funnily enough, and I think this is completely, like I said before, ironic, they are doing that because they're inconsistent. So this might actually benefit us of like, we're postulating all these things. And I think ironically, that's what it should be doing because they hire someone to write the script. They do this, they do that. They're not straight up like, reading Alex White's novels or, reading the Dark Horse comics or reading the Marvel comics. They don't have time to do that. So they're running with what they know from the other scripts and the other films and whatever the director's talking about. And I think that's unfortunately the reality. And, we're here postulating these things, and that's fine. But I do think that it could work because of this misuse. But at the same time, if you get a good writer who could amplify that and set the precedent of the mystery, not the precedent of the science behind it, but the precedent of the mystery, like the space jockey, then we have something good. But yeah, I don't know if that will happen.
I just say, like, for me, the cardinal important thing in the Alien series is mystery. And everybody knows I love Covenant. It would probably be my least favorite of the films if Ridley got to make his third prequel and tie it directly to say, like, oh, this is exactly the same thing. This is the same alien that you see in the next film, and blah blah blah. It's not the protomorph, it's the actual xenomorph. Like that would ruin Covenant for me. But as Covenant stands now, it doesn't do that. It's just this kind of like branching part of the timeline where David was kind of approximating what the engineers were working on, and it kind of led in this other direction, which I love. Because to me, like, what is so exciting about the goo to this day is that we don't know, like to Andy's point, we really don't know where it came from, how the engineers got it. And I think that's really cool. Like maybe the engineers were just the first ones to come up with the steatite ampule idea to contain it. Like maybe the other races or civilizations came across this thing and it was the end of them because they couldn't, they got a hold of it. And just like the engineers kind of calling to humans to come find them, it was almost like this became like a marker for alien civilizations. They would get to a point where they would eventually be able to travel and they would find this accelerant or this pathogen, and they would seek to harness it, because part of the qualifications for leaving your world in the first place is hubris, right? Like all these races that are trying to get off planet are probably, it's because they're so smart and so advanced they think they can go wherever they want, and because of that they can kind of control everything they want to control. And then they get there and they find this thing that gives them the potentially the key to life, and they try to control it, and it's the end of them. And maybe the engineers were the first ones for some reason to stop that because they could actually contain it. And I think that is kind of a cool way to look at it, but I'm really grateful that we don't actually know any of that. And in some ways, the implication in Romulus that, Big Chap's DNA is genetically identical to the pathogen in a sloppy way actually is kind of intriguing, because then it upsets the whole thing again, because then you're like, what is this? Like, this is just this elemental blackness in the universe that is self-similar, and that is a strange loop that creates these things and destroys these things. And nobody started that cycle and nobody will end that cycle, because it just is the nature of things. Like the nature of things is to be light and dark. And like, this is the dark, like this is the thing that we'll never really get our heads around. I think treating it more like that is cool. Treating it as this thing that like is a civilization killer because it speaks to the themes in the film, which are that humanity will always fly too close to the sun.
I like that.
Maybe it's dark energy. It's
Maybe, yeah. No, I was literally, as I was saying that, I was thinking, because that is something that is what the most of the universe consists of,
right.
and yet we have no idea what it is. Right?
Shout out to Poop. No, sorry, never mind.
Oh, no, go for it. Go for it. Dude, I'll take any poop shout out you got. Go.
The shout out to Poop Vein. He knows what's going on with the particle accelerator with dark matter and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry, you brought that up. I had to say it. But
even things like gravity, right? Like I always bring gravity up as this great example of something that we've known and had a label for 500 years now, and yet we still have no idea what it is, or like why it functions, or why it has these observable effects on things. Why when I drop my phone it hits the table. Like, we just don't know. Like, we literally don't know. Like one of my best friends in the world is a physicist, and we're going up to dinner next week again. We talk about this shit for hours, and I'm always like, "Are we any closer to figuring that?" And he's like, "Nope." And I love that, because it's, everybody's always wants to talk about quarks and muons and string theory bullshit, when like we don't even fucking know what gravity is yet. And that's cool. And that's a scary idea. Like, again, that's cosmic horror, right? That we are surrounded and inhibited by this thing that kills us if we fall off a bridge. And yet we don't even know what it looks like, right?
Yeah. Well, it's
the
true.
great thing about gravity.
Good.
Okay. I was gonna say the great thing about gravity though is it is mysterious, but it's also lethal. We know how it works enough to know don't get too close to the edge. Don't go over here. Be careful on this. Do these things because it's going to kill you or really hurt you. And I think to your point, Patrick, I think it would be great if in the next film or whatever, with the black goo pathogen, whatever, it's set on the shelf, like figuratively, and we don't see it again. But maybe it has impacted. Maybe the next, like for instance, let's just say the sequel to Romulus has the Rain and Andy crashing on Ora J6 where the Covenant people are. Let's just say for the sake of discussion. It would be great if what they encounter there in terms of creatures or danger are creatures that have been impacted by the black goo. We don't need that conversation. We don't need to hear the ins and outs of that. All we know is that we know now that this thing has happened. This thing is real and it's dangerous. That's all we need to know. And I think, again, Mario, you're talking about, or Kyle, you're talking about like a better script or a better writers. And I think yes and no. Yes, better writers, but just give them the time. Give them the time to write something good. Give them the time where they can put a script together in 6 months to really make sure that it's airtight as much as it could be. People will always find some trouble with something, but yeah, just giving these films the time to craft a story that feels real. And if they can do that, I don't think anyone's going to have a problem with the pathogen.
I think maybe the black goo should be kind of like gravity to us, but it should be more concretely like that. You know what I mean? Like where we know, like you were just saying, Jamie, we know enough about it to respect it and abide by its laws. Maybe in the next movie, it would be cool to have some sort of feeling that we know what this goo does and what it can do, and we can respectfully, I'm sure Wayland Yutani will respectfully use it to their own ends, and then we have our protagonist maybe trying to avoid being harmed by it or avoid allowing it to be released upon the world and all of that. So if we can find that medium where the black goo is both understood in a very broad, vague sense and accepted in that way, I think it might work better for us instead of kind of piecemeal over here. Oh, we can put this connection together and make that work and put that connection together and that works. But I like the idea of them seeing other, like maybe Rain and Andy see other ways that the goo affects on this planet. And it's just like, this is what the goo does. It can be this, it can be this, it can be that, but we don't need to know further about it. Like we don't need to know who found it first, all that.
Yeah, I'm loving the gravity analogy because, like you said, there's so much still we don't know. But the one thing we do know is the consistency of how it works, right? We're never going to like throw a ball up and it's going to fly the other way. So that I think is what we're all kind of talking about. There has to be some kind of rules that we can latch onto where we might not understand why or how it's working, but what it will do to a certain point, you know? And which is not to say that it can't mutate or change, but in a way that makes sense scientifically, you know, where it's, I think, consistent, at least with our base understanding, where it's not so fantastically um, different every time, where it's hard to wrap our brains around it. We're limited, right? Like we're humans and we're going to watch a story that has to somehow make sense to us in order for us to feel the things we want to feel. Um, I just think that whoever's writing it needs to go through the lore of the Black Goo and really just narrow it down with like maybe a team or themselves and consult with people like Alex White who've, you know, written about it extensively and maybe just come to some kind of concrete thing. Because I love when new directors and new writers take the helm, but not at the extent of a story where it's like you're playing that telephone game and people just make shit up and as they go. Um, I never I always feel like that's is usually a detriment to the story as a whole, to the world building, if you will. The world has to have some kind of consistency. But having said that, I think you can make this substance, whatever it is, extremely scary. You know, even like going back to the spore part on Covenant, I thought that whole beginning was utterly frightening because no one sabotaged, no one like purposely, you know, put the black goo into like it was just they were surrounded by it and he just sat and took a breath and was breathing and it was horrific. And I think that's the scariest part is when it could happen to, you know, just any, just biologically, we're just living and these things can kill you. Like a tick in the woods or, you know, any of that, where it's just, it's going to be sinister, more sinister. Um, I think it can be used to great effect if it's sort of reined in.
I think
I want to
Andy
go
to
back to, go ahead,
oh
Mario.
so I was just gonna say real quick. I think to Andy, to your point, and Jamie, what you were saying with the with Rain and Andy possibly going to see like to a planet and seeing how the black goo affected other creatures. I would actually really like to see like a Weyland Yutani facility to where they're kind of just like they don't know what it is and they're still messing around with it. So maybe they have different animals and stuff they're testing it on, and they'll change something, and then maybe they have a few almost like a resurrection style where they have people brought in or prisoners or people that they captured that they're testing it on, and maybe it does do something weird like an egg morphing thing where they get to just changing little things and just having just a bunch of different reactions. But I do not want to see a full outbreak of this. I would actually like to see one Weyland Yutani facility function 100% smoothly, and the horror is just like in the cells of the people experiencing like just utter this like torture and like body horror, and they're just like alone in a science lab, I think would be terrifying. But if I read one more story where it starts in a science lab and everything goes to hell again, I'm gonna lose my mind.
My favorite is when you look up like plot summaries for like, you know, for the show a lot of the time, like before we record, I have to be like, oh, what happened in this novel that I read 15 years ago? So I like type it out. And it always starts with like predictably a science lab experiment goes awry. And I'm like every single it's funny when you reduce it to like the basics, like a lot of them have that exact same structure. It's funny, Mario, when you were talking about the company functioning well, I thought you were going to stop with that. And I was like, that actually would be a really scary thing just to see what this company is actually capable of, like without things going wrong, like just like an actual, like when Wayland Yutani actually just gets its way, like that's a scary idea in itself because like we're seeing that in our world, like right now, like we have a fucking trillionaire right now who bankrolls a lot of terrible things. And we can't do anything about that. Like that's just the nature of our capitalist society is we are going to create billionaires and now trillionaires and we have nothing, we can't do anything about it. That there's something really scary in that to me. And Wayland Yutani being like the perfect example of like just this omnipotent corporation with unlimited funds and zero scruples, you know?
There's like that you said that, Patrick. There's in Cold War, I don't want to spoil anything in case anyone listening to this hasn't got to read Cold War yet. But I mean, if you haven't by this point, like you really need to. I'd always
Yeah,
want a
Mario.
alternate ending where someone maybe makes it out, and how they go about if they made it to a facility to run things around like a oh, man, I can't really say it too well, but like I see what you're saying, like Patrick, like for sure, especially someone so evil in charge to run that kind of company and it doesn't fall apart. The horrors inside that facility, I think, would be really cool and something different that we haven't seen because everything always falls apart constantly.
What also would be really scary, I think, is if let's just say the whether we get a film wrapping up the prequels or whether Romulus 2 involves it or whatever, but they get to this planet and you know how David's lab, which he was kind of doing these weird things, like he's doing these like autopsies on like plants and eggs and all sorts of things. But if the sequel would up it, where you get in there, and because on the Covenant there were all of those uh, embryos and all those kinds of things. If he just was like, let's just see what this does, and it infects all of it, and things start growing with it, that could be terrifying. That's kind of like almost like Frankenstein's lab. That could be, yeah, where who knows what we would see. I think that has the potential to be something really scary. Certainly also Wayland Yutani doing it as well. But I feel like if it's in this environment where this crazy robot thinks he's God, who knows what he has made. And I think I mean, there could be like just the idea of like the pathogen infecting into like let's just say a 6 month old, and that 6 month old is growing. There's something wrong with it, but it's just a little bit off. But it looks kind of normal, but it's not normal. Almost like what we see in the lab in Alien Resurrection, but even better than that. We see those different ideas of Ripley. Those were horrific. But imagine if those things were alive and like rolling around or whatever in some spaceship or on the ground. I think that would be terrifying.
I think you make a good point, because I think that is like, besides like the existential reflections in Resurrection in the chapel, I feel like that's the best scene in Resurrection, with the lab.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and like I feel like the black goo, if we think about it, so if script writers are listening, it could be a good vehicle for body horror, like to amplify that, dread, and horror, that emerges from that. Because like, seeing that that scene as a kid, I felt a sense of dread that, seeing, this like failed Ripley clone saying "kill me," like that was some like real, serious, stuff at that moment, happening. And we don't really get a lot of that kind of horror in Alien. And, and one of the best scenes ever, I think, is the egg morphing scene in the first one, where you are having, which is a callback maybe to that, even, of Dallas begging to be killed. And we see it in the second Aliens. That's not that we do in a moment with the chest burster, but it's predictable. We know they're going to that it's a chest burster, versus like, we don't understand what's happening to Dallas or the clone of Ripley. We don't know what's going on with her. Like, even if we see it, it's like we don't know ontologically how that individual is experiencing life. But anyway, I think the black goo can, engender a lot of the that kind of dread and create horrifying, moments in a film, that perhaps we need.
I really want to go back just for a second to Andy's point, the making gravity more of like a direct kind of metaphor for this. Because the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that really is the key, I think, to Andy's point. Like, gravity is perfect because like we don't understand it, but it affects literally everything. And it does not affect things in standard ways, because gravity, of course, is relativistic, right? Thanks to Einstein telling us that and his theory of general relativity. So like gravity is not things, being pulled at all. Gravity is because space-time is warping between an object and another object, right? So it is this like property of the universe. Like, it is just this like thing that is inescapable, but because of how it's observed, it can affect things differently. You can have time dilation, right? Like we see most famously in Christopher Nolan's work, but like, it's all over the place. And you can have, like, it has effects on like biology, right? You have, look at black holes, for example, right? Like these incredibly intense expressions of gravity, because they distort it so much, they distort space-time so much. You have these event horizons beyond which like things stretch essentially into infinity. That's such a scary concept. And yet it's the same exact force, quote unquote. It's not really a force, I guess, but it's the same exact property of my phone hitting the table. That's the same thing that's happening in a black hole that is dilating somebody beyond the limits of our imagination. That's really scary. And I think that is exactly how you do black goo correctly. Like, you give us something that has observable properties that make sense within themselves, but we still can barely understand. I mean, we can't understand the functions of how. There's no like, oh, it's mutagenic sometimes, and sometimes it's destructive, and it's sometimes it's the actual alien, and sometimes it's Plagiaris praepotens, and sometimes it's like something that the engineers invented. There's like none of that like gobbledygook. It's just something that's sort of beyond that. It's a property. It's a property of the universe, and something that Christian and I always talk about is like, the cosmic horror of Alien, and about how there's something that like the prequels do that I'm not crazy about is they are trying to kind of imply that this is a much younger situation than the original film leads us to believe. By that I mean like in the original movie, like when we get to LV-426, like we have no, I mean it's the sole engineer that we have there, or the jockey rather, is fossilized. Like it looks like he's been there for who knows how long. We don't know anything about how old this organism is, like how long these ovomorphs were dormant. Like we just don't know. We don't know if this was there at the birth of the universe or not. Like we have no information about it. And then of course in the prequels, and especially in this third one that didn't get made, really wanted to make it be like, oh no, actually this kind of just happened. And the alien that you see in the first movie is something that it just got invented essentially. The idea of like reducing goo to something like gravity, I think is great because it becomes like a property of the universe. I mean, it makes sense. Like it's a metaphor we see all over the place, right? If you have life, you have to have death. If you have birth, you have to have destruction. If you have creation, you have to have the end of everything. And the goo is like this beautiful yang to the yin of everything else that's going on in Alien. Like the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, this could be one of the best things in the entire saga. If it's treated well, like if it's treated with deference, as something that's not just like an excuse to have quick answers and have cool monsters. If it's something more than that, I mean, last thing I'll say, I know we got to wrap and get to final thoughts and things, but I feel like part of the problem with the goo is that we're presented with this thing that feels so infinite and unknowable, but it does very specific, knowable, biologically recognizable things, right? It mutates things, and it destroys things, but it happens in ways that like we see in nature, like on a different scale. Like we know that, you have acid can corrode an organism, you can have genetically engineered, organisms, et cetera, et cetera. Like I think it would be scarier if it did things that we just couldn't understand. If it did things that we would have no label for, like to our conversation on liminality last night, if it did things that we could not recognize, like if it altered the wavelength of light that we are able to perceive, and we had no idea why. We didn't know why all of a sudden we saw like ultraviolet wavelengths, but that was like a symptom of it. Like something like that, something where it's not just, oh, it's cool, something where it's like, why does it do this to us? Like it is not, my last thing, it's because I don't want it to feel like it's made for us, right? Like I don't want it to just make a bunch of cool humanoid monsters and stuff. I want it to do things that where it seems like we were not even an afterthought. Like we weren't even considered when this thing was created or when it evolved or when it was birthed or whatever. Like humans don't even fucking matter to this. Like it's so much bigger than just this one dumbass species from this random planet. That would be cool. And so because of that, it just affects us in ways that are just totally even inconsequential. Like what if it actually wasn't a big deal, but it was just ever present and it did things to other things, to the way that we perceive time or something. I don't know. There's a lot to it, but I think it needs to be rethought.
My last point might be, I think if they're going to do this, and again, we don't know if they will, I love the idea, and several of us have brought this up before, and I can't remember who did it last time, but in terms of a committee, where when a script is written, you have a committee of people who are, that's their job, that's their role. When an alien comes out and they go through the script and like, hey, does this work? What about this question here? What's going on over here? And they go through it section by section and make sure that everything is working as well as it should, and that there are no holes, plot holes, or like, oh, this is too convenient using it here. I mean, I think some of it with Romulus, even though the offspring is fucking scary as shit, I love it, but it was a little conveniently made, sort of at the last minute, and then she's pregnant for all of 5 seconds, and she's not just pregnant, she grows to full term in 2 minutes and then pushes this egg out. It's too quick. And what I think that's what's happening is they've been sacrificing, I guess, time for the sake of pacing. So you had Navarro get face hugged and she's on the floor and they freeze it off her, and then the alien comes out 5 minutes later, less than 5 minutes later, or something like that. All of this is so quick, and nature doesn't work that way. Nature never works that way. I guess sometimes there are things that happen quickly, but it's not that's just not how things work. Things take time. And I think if they can give this time, if they can give the pathogen, however they want to use it, time to like gestate and change, and maybe it's changing someone's interior for a long time. So this character that we're getting to know and love, they've been infected. They don't know until this thing is almost ready. So they've been infected for 2 weeks. And that, of course, we see that happening over like transitions and days in the film where they're like, oh yeah, everything's fine. And then when they're at a point where something's at stake, then the thing decides to come out. And I think, Kane was similar. We had time with Kane. Kane, the chest burster did come out after he woke up, but we don't know how long that was. It could have been. I mean, I would probably imagine it was that same morning, right? Because they wake him up, he's in there, and then they're like, "Oh, we should have one last meal," and then Dallas says, "I'm buying." So I guess it was pretty quick, but it didn't feel quick. It felt like they had patience, and I think a lot of why this stuff lacks power, that lacks believability, is because of the time. And if they can give it time, we can give it more of our belief.
So Jamie, talking about time and whatnot, I think you're echoing like the idea of dread a lot that is lacking in this. I feel like, not to like, toot our own horns, but I think Apotheosis looks at dread very well, in the sense of understanding that a character is going through something. And I think time is an issue with the last few films if you look at how the pacing goes, and there's so many reasons why that obviously happens, but I do think dread needs to be it. So that's definitely one point that I wanted to bring up. And then the second being, I think, like, you don't have to read every single thing, but I think script writers need to go back to the Dark Horse comics. I think they need to look at the grace that some of the Dark Horse writers gave, that were genuine fans, that were looking at this work with immense investment in every single way, shape, or form, and where we got some pretty interesting stories because of that. And with all of that being said, I think that's how the black goo can become ineffable. It can become something that is like looking at the xenomorph when why can't I think of his name? The first, I always, this is like a thing I do. The character with the hat in the first one. Why can't
I mean Brett.
Brett, thank you. I promise you I've seen the movies. But like but yeah, with Brett's, almost like ineffable reaction, you can make the black goo do that. Until then, I still think it's fine. Like, I think it could be great. It's just in whoever's hands wants to establish that precedent to make it seem like we don't know what's going on, which is what, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but aliens at its best when we don't know what's happening. And yeah.
I feel like the fact that all six of us talking about this, not one of us have been outright, I hate this thing and I don't know why it's in an alien universe, I think says a lot. You know what I mean? It doesn't not work totally for all of us. And I think that's kind of the general consensus I've got from fandom as well. So I think there's definitely a lot more to explore with this without stepping on people's toes. And at the same time, like, if they're at like the middle ground right now, it could get a lot better, but also could get a lot worse, like we were saying, if they start explaining too much with it. But I feel like that's a good sign if all of us are still like pretty much optimistic on what it could be.
And the vibe in the chat similarly bears that out. Like, people are having amazing ideas about it. It's an interesting concept. I think it just needs some sort of like consistency,
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, this is awesome. Let's do some producer shout outs, shall we?
Yeah.
All right. Nathan Gribble, Darren Gold. Oh my God. Nathan, try it again. Nathan Gribble, Darren Gold, Murray Kucherawi, Jonas Holmston, David Holmes, Dave Turner, Gene McDonald, Perry Chicos, Matthew Bruff, Carl McLean, Joseph Rosner, Blood Hut, Vincent Harris, Steve Patterson, G. Latore Yates, Zarnold Quigley, Ross Yost, Weed, Sean Rosado, Jeff DeLoff, Carl Hinkst, Chris B., Jeremiah White, Peter from Melbourne, Gary Smith, Angel Cruz, Wayland Yutani, Distinguished Engineer, Brazen God, Sky Aaron, Jordan, Eric Poopvane Stevens, Ali Kara, Matt Thomas, and Andrew Tracy. You guys rock. Thank you for all the amazing feedback on Jamie's draft of what may be coming next Alien Day.
Mm-hmm.
Very exciting.
Also, big shout out to Murray Kucharawe, who saved my ass on Facebook today because I just about, it was crazy. I got hacked, all sorts of things. He's been a patron for a long, long time from our Blade Runner podcasts. You're awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, Murray's
Awesome.
the man. Murray's incredible.